FRM Part 1. Let us start with the first unit, which is Foundations of Risk Management. Under this, the first aim statement is risk taking, a corporate governance perspective. Under this chapter, we are going to understand the definition of risk. We'll also identify various kinds of classification of risk, and we'll understand what role the risk plays for value creation in a company. We'll also understand the risk profile and how it is created. This is nothing but the listing down of all kinds of risk and putting them in right categories. Then we'll look at the role of risk governance in a corporation. We'll also identify enterprise risk management, which is a holistic approach inside a corporation, and understand how the risk management is addressed in an organization. We'll also understand how the value of a risky asset or a risky project can be estimated through different methodologies such as risk adjusted discount rate and how it can be created. Then we'll also look at the strengths and weaknesses of these approaches. We'll also describe various problems which arise when we are using historical beta and equity risk premiums into various valuation models, for example capital asset pricing model, etc. We'll also construct a risk adjusted discount rate for an asset or project to estimate the value of the project. Then we'll describe a certainty equivalent approach that is also used for valuation, and we also understand the difference between risk adjusted discount rate and certainty equivalent approach. Then we look at the 4 steps which have been defined by AIR-MIC in risk management, and we summarize the overall approach. Then we look at 4 risk treatment strategies. We look at various kind of probabilistic approaches, for example simulation approach, scenario analysis, sensitivity analysis, value at risk, decision tree, etc. And then we compare them with other techniques for decision making in risk management. Then we look at hedging, a phenomena which is used for risk reduction or transfer of risk. We look at the cost and the benefits of the hedging, and we compare in various situations how to take a decision whether to hedge or not. We'll also identify financial products which firm can use for elimination or reduction of the exposure to various kind of risk. We'll also identify the methods which a firm can use to exploit risk better than the competitors, and that way how can it create a culture of prudent risk taking among the employees. Then we summarize the basic steps in building a good risk management system within a corporation. And finally, we'll find some examples of acceptable, desirable and best practices in corporate risk governance. So this is the perspective from which we are going to understand the risk as a concept. So let us start. What is risk? In general understanding, risk is taken as a negative phenomena. It is an exposure to a hazardous situation. But when we are looking from a corporate governance perspective, we need to understand that it has both downside and upside risk. The downside risk is to be avoided, and there has to be upside risk which is to be taken advantage of, which should be taken in order to create more value in the organization. When the managers are able to understand and identify the various risks associated properly, and they are able to categorize them and use them for value creation in the company, that is the process of value creation through risk. Let us move to the next concept, risk classification. Though there is no one fixed classification of risk, there are various approaches which have been used in various companies and have been recommended by various researchers. Let us look at one kind of classification. Here it has been broadly categorized into four groups: financial risk, operational risk, strategic risk, and hazard risk, under which we can have different categories. For example, in financial risk, it could be internal or external risk. Within the category of internal risk, we have chance of insolvency. There could be counterparty risk, whether the other party is able to pay for the contract or no. There could be financial structure planning risk, which is also part of internal risk. In the external risk side, we have interest rate risk, which is driven by the market forces. There could be currency exchange risk. The company does not have a control on it, but it can be affected by a fluctuation in the exchange rate. And the inflation, that is also beyond the control of the company, so that is why it is called an external financial risk. Now if you look at the operational risk, there could be risk coming from business operations, supply chain management, efficiency of various processes, etc. Another kind of operational risk could arise from information technology problems. If all the IT functions and systems are working smoothly, this risk can be controlled. Then on the strategic risk side, we have reputational risk. If there has been a bad publicity about the company, there could be demographic and social trends. If they are changing sharply against the company's interest, then that is a strategic risk. There could be regulatory and political trends. If these trends are changing and they are against the company's interest, then that is a strategic risk. Company has to either adopt for that or try to change the approach. And finally, we have hazard risk, which could be due to an accident. It could be fire or property damage. It could be due to theft, crime, or a personal injury. It could be due to a disease. So this is a broad classification. There could be another kinds of risk which could be company specific. So managers need to identify to what kind of risk the company has been exposed to and to put them in respective categories accordingly. Let us move to the next slide. The first and most important concept is risk profile, where the management is just listing all kinds of risk which the company is exposed to and categorizing them into groups. So this is enterprise starting point for risk analysis. So it's a major step in appropriate oversight of risk taking by firm, which includes listing out all the risk which firm is potentially exposed to and categorizing them into different groups. Now the managers need to look at both positive effects and negative effects of risk. They not only need to look at the downside potential due to various risks, but also they need to look at the upside potential. So if there are certain risks which are worth taking and they can be helpful in value creation in the company, so they should be taken. So the exposure to good risk has to be increased. So this was just the first step. So most of the firms need to go beyond risk profiling. Then they conduct risk assessments, risk treatment, and final step is monitoring of the risk. Let us look at the next slide. Risk profile. Once it is done, the various risks can be divided into three groups. First group would be the risk that should be allowed to pass through the firm to its owners. The second kind of risk which should be hedged and should not be allowed to pass. And third, the risk which should be exploited. It should not be hedged but should be exploited for value creation. So broadly, this division becomes a part of a large process which is called risk treatment. We will look at this process in detail in subsequent slides. Let us move to the next concept, risk governance. This is a relatively new term in the context of corporate governance. In the area of information technology, this is a usually understood concept. Here, Risk governance can be defined as the ways in which here it can be defined as ways in which the directors authorize, optimize and monitor risk taking in an enterprise. Good risk governance provide clearly defined accountability, authority and communication reporting mechanism. These are essential components of good risk governance inside a company. The risk governance also include the skills which the company is creating in the area of risk management and the infrastructure. So one is the skills and another is the infrastructure which the company is creating to facilitate risk management. It could be IT infrastructure, legal infrastructure or physical infrastructure which the company is creating in order to have a better risk management. So the risk oversight is responsibility of the entire board. So the board may be involved directly. It can create risk committees for these responsibilities, or these risk committee can be clubbed with auditing committees. So that is how broadly risk governance is maintained inside a company. Let us move to another important concept, which is ERM or enterprise risk management. ERM is also called corporate risk management. This is an evolving concept and it is gaining importance as a strategic support activity. So this is emphasizing on a comprehensive and holistic approach to risk management. So now we are shifting away from siloed approach of separately handling each organizational risk. Earlier we were taking each risk separately. Now the concept of corporate risk management or enterprise risk management is enabling us to look at the all kinds of risk in a holistic point of view and then addressing them at a better higher level. Earlier we were using a compartmentalized approach in risk management. For example, the treasurer was involved in the currency risk management. The suppliers were the source of one kind of business risk. Then the credit manager or sales manager used to look at the credit risk. The commodity traders will look at the commodity price risk. The personnel department will look after the human resource risk, and the quality control groups will look after the production quality risk. On the same lines, the risk arising from the competition used to be taken care by marketing or strategy department. But now when we are talking about ERM, then in a large conglomerate, the complete risk will be taken as holistic way. For example, if one division is exposed to a long risk in a currency and another department suppose has a short position in the same currency, or for example it could be commodity, that one division is long in the commodity, other division is short in the commodity, then earlier we were hedging these risks separately, but now under the concept of corporate risk management or ERM, we look at the net position. So there is natural hedging which has been provided by the concept of ERM. Now we just look at the net position to be hedged. So risk is a strategic support activity which has to be taken at the firm level. So ERM creates business value through an integrated process of identification, estimation, assessment, handling and controlling of the risk. So it views risk management as a value creating activity and not limited to just a mitigation activity. So we are not just concerned by the mitigation of risk, but we are looking at a point of view of value creation. We have already taken this example of currency exposure in different divisions. Let us move to the next concept, different approaches of ERM. So there are two approaches which are widely disseminated regarding ERM. The first approach is COSO2 ERM and the second is CAS ERM. The first risk framework, COSO second ERM, has been provided by Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of Tradeway Commission. And the main objectives are to achieve strategic, operational and reporting and compliance objectives. And the second approach is given by CAS, which is Casualty Actuarial Society. This framework is focusing on hazard, financial, strategic and operational risk. All four broad categories of risk which we have just talked about. So overall purpose is same. There are certain difference in the mechanism of handling the risk. Let us move to the next concept, risk and value creation. As we have talked about, the objective of managing the risk is to make the firm more valuable. This is the primary objective for directors and managers. So even if they are creating values for shareholders or stakeholders as a whole, the idea remains the same. The objective is to make the firm more valuable. Since we are using risk for value creation, when we are doing valuation of a company, we need to make the adjustment for the risk so that we reach a more suitable and appropriate valuation. So for the managers, there are two choices, risk taking and risk avoidance. The management has to take a call for a particular risk, how much risk can create value and should be taken, and what kind of risk has to be avoided. For valuation, we can use risk adjusted valuation using capital asset pricing model. This model is considered to be very useful and doubly advantageous because the concept of risk is already built in. The market risk which is already built in the model. We have the coefficient beta which is used for valuation of a particular company where market risk is already taken care of. So this is the systematic risk which cannot be diversified away. There are other kinds of risk which are non-systematic risk or specific risk which can be diversified using investment in different companies. So that is why the market risk is accounted for in the case of CAPM, while the other kind of risk can be diversified away since they are non-systematic risk. Now let us look at these risk adjusted valuation approaches in detail. So the value of a risky asset can be estimated in two different ways. First is risk adjusted discount rate and the second is certainty equivalent approach. So when we talk about risk adjusted discount rate, we keep the cash flows as it is. We use the expected cash flows on the asset over its life at risk adjusted discount rate. So we are keeping the cash flows same as they are expected, but since there is risk, we adjust the discount rate for the risk. Let us take one example. Suppose there is a project where the company has invested $1 million. At the end of first year, the company is expecting say $200,000 as a revenue, say $100,000 as expense. So net cash inflow is $100,000 for the first year, and the cost of capital is say 6%. But we are not sure, there is a risk that this cash inflows can actually be achieved or not. There are certain risks associated with that. So under risk adjusted discount rate, we use the $100,000 which is expected cash flow as it is, but divide by a risk adjusted rate. So instead of 6%, we can adjust it by say 1% because of that risk. We can have 1.07 instead of 1.06. So 1% adjustment was there for the risk. So this is first approach, which is risk adjusted discount rate. The second approach is certainty equivalent approach. In this, we are not changing the rate, we are using just the discount rate as risk-free rate, but we are adjusting the expected cash flow for the risk. For example, in this case, suppose there are 90% chances that $100,000 will be achieved as cash inflow in the first year. So we can adjust it. So our expected cash flow, which was 100,000, has to be adjusted. So now adjusted expected cash flow is 90,000, and in the bottom we are going to use just risk-free rate of return. So instead of the adjustment in denominator here, we are just doing that adjustment in the numerator. Both ways we are accounting for the risk. So both of them are risk adjusted value approaches. The only difference is whether the adjustment is there in the discount rate or it is there in the expected cash flow. Let us move to the next slide. Risk adjusted discount rate approach, in which we are going to make adjustment to the discount rate. So we are using capital asset pricing model for calculation of cost of equity. For that we need to have an estimate of equity risk premium and we need to make estimation of beta. Since our CAPM is cost of equity, say RE, is equal to risk-free rate of return plus beta times market rate minus risk-free rate. So this is market risk premium, and if our asset is more riskier than the market, then beta is going to be more than 1. If it is less risky, then our value of beta is going to be less than 1. So that is a factor. So this approach gives us cost of equity. Here the equity risk premium, this has to be estimated. So if we are understanding the risk and evaluating the risk properly, then our equity risk premium will be more appropriate. There is a problem with the estimation of beta, since for beta calculation we are using historical values. The historical values may not be giving us the proper idea about the future risk of that particular asset. So that is a limitation if we are using historical method for estimation of beta. Then if we look at the cost of debt for the company, we start with the risk-free rate, then we can adjust for default spread based on the credit rating. For example, if it is AAA rated bond, then we just adjust for say 2%, say risk-free rate was say 3%. So for AAA we are going to have 5% cost of debt. If it is AA, we might have say 2.5%, for single A 3%, and so on. So if the default spread is higher, that indicates that the chances of default are higher or rating is poor. If the rating is good, then the default spread is going to be lower and cost of debt is going to be lower. So this is how the risk is inbuilt in the cost of debt. Similarly, there has to be an adjustment for the country risk. If it is a developed country, the country risk is practically zero. But if there is a political risk in the country, or there is a chance of economic or political instability, then there has to be adjustment for country risk as well. So all these risks are becoming a part of discount rate itself. That is why we call it risk adjusted discount rate approach. So all the risk which we consider should be put in the discount rate. Now similarly, if there is any preferred share or any other mode of raising capital, then that has to be also adjusted accordingly. And finally, if we have to calculate weighted average cost of capital, we can just put the weights and find out the weighted average cost of capital of the company. Since we have taken separately the risk for equity and debt, we do not need to take them here. So the risk is adjusted in the discount rate itself. Now let us move to the next approach, which is certainty equivalent approach. As we have already talked, that we just adjust the expected cash flow for the risk rather than the discount rate. So the adjustment can be calculated using different methodologies, which may include the computation of certainty equivalents using utility function. This approach is very difficult. That is why most of the times it is not adopted. It is not worth doing a computationally extensive exercise. So that is why this approach is not preferred. The second approach is subjectively estimate a haircut decrease to the expected cash flow. As we have taken the example, the last slide, where we assumed that there are 10% chances of not receiving that $100,000 cash flow and 90% chances of getting that. So we can just deduct the 10% haircut and decrease the cash flow by that amount. So we decrease it by 10,000. So we use $90,000 as expected cash flow. But since there is a subjectivity involved here, the haircut is an arbitrary term. Different analysts might put different number there based on their own risk aversion, etc. So this also is not very reliable approach. Third approach is converting the expected cash flows into certainty equivalent. So this is more reliable and simple approach where we are just using the expected cash flow and converting them into certainty equivalent. In the first approach, we were using utility functions which were not very reliable and very computationally intensive. Here, at every step of cash flow, we can assign certain certainty number, and based on which we can easily convert the expected cash flow into certainty equivalent that can be used for the calculation of value of the asset. So these were the different approaches within certainty equivalent approach for risk adjusted valuations. Let us move to the next concept, which is AIR-MIC risk management process. So this process requires the risk management analysis to be carried out in 4 sequential stages, which have been defined as: the first is identification of risk management and enterprise objectives. What are the objectives? What the company is trying to achieve from the risk management. Second is assessment of risk, which has 2 parts: the analysis of risk and the evaluation of risk. Within analysis also we have 2 parts. We will look at them separately in the subsequent slides. The third step is risk treatment. One part of it we have already seen. And third is monitoring of risk. Let us look at them in detail one by one. The first step is identification of risk management and enterprise objectives. This is primarily a managerial phase, which begins with determining the enterprise approach to the risk, including planning for resources made available, which might include human resource or information technology tools or physical sources, etc., which are there for risk management, and selecting a general criteria for treating risk. So this is the first step. The directors and the managers define the strategic objective and operational goals which are compatible with the risk aversion of shareholders. So that is the important criteria. Since they are trying to maximize the enterprise value, they need to look at the strategic objectives and operational goals which are compatible with the risk aversion level of the shareholders, so that the company is neither taking less risk and nor it is taking excessive risk, because both are not preferred by the shareholders. If the company is taking excessive risk, then there are chances of greater downside, and if they are not taking sufficient risk, then the return will be accordingly lower. So that is also not preferred by the shareholders. The enterprise select a risk strategy which is compatible with the degree of risk aversion that is prevailing. That is the main objective of the first step, identification. Let us move to the next step, risk analysis, which has 2 parts: risk identification and risk estimation. So first one, identification, in which we are going to identify the potential sources of negative events which are capable of compromising achievement of strategic and operational objectives. So we need to find out all those potential sources which can cause a problem to the strategic and operational objectives. And the second step, risk estimation. Once the risk map is drawn based on the risk identification, now the enterprise must quantify the probability of the event as well as its impact on the cash flow. Once we know these two values, we can estimate the expected and unexpected losses and upsides if are there. So now let us look at the risk identification in